Yes?
Rayla, how are you holding up?
Not certain I understand what you mean.
All Edirn is aflame. Nilfgaard's banners fly over its cities. Don't tell me you're not troubled.
Of course I'm troubled. I stationed at Rosberg for 5 years. Knew all on the crew there by name. But that's war. That's its nature. No sense bemoaning it.
I see. Just know if ever you wish to talk.
I won't, but I do appreciate your concern, ma'am.
This Eldane. Could you tell me about him?
He should hang.
I'd hope to hear advice that will be useful to us in battle.
First of all, you can't rightly trust the bastard. He doesn't respect our laws, doesn't share our morals. The king once dispatched an envoy to Eldane, despite my advice to the contrary. Found the envoy the next day, eyes gouged out, shaft of his white flag jammed down his throat.
So, diplomacy is clearly not the wisest course. But what of battle? What tactics does he employ?
Like all elves, he's a worm. Avoids open confrontation, sets ambushes, attacks from the shadows, from midst the trees. It would be best to burn this whole forest to the ground, deprive him and his folk of cover, any place to hide.
Sounds rather drastic. Like tossing the babe out with the bath.
Believe me, they'd not hesitate to do the same to us. Not for a moment.
I must go. We'll speak later.
Yes?
I must go. We'll speak later.
Your Majesty, I've been meaning to thank you for allowing me to join your ranks.
Certainly, Xavier. I welcome all foes of Nilfgaard to march beneath my banner. But what did the field surgeon say? Have you not resumed work too soon?
I've strength enough to wield a hammer, though my scars still burn, and fiercely so. My lady, I've seen folk turn and frown at the very sight of me. If my appearance disgusts you, I can...
Nonsense. The Nilfgaardians, not you, should be ashamed. You've no reason to hide, no reason to cower.
Thank you, my lady. It means a great deal to hear that.
You've long served in King Demoven's army, haven't you?
Yes, Your Grace.
Why enlist at all? What prompted you to do so?
The king needed engineers. I answered the call.
Not terribly talkative, are you?
I can build any bridge, any ballista, but to talk, well, it hurts to talk.
I see. Well, do not worry. I prefer deeds to words, in myself and others. Other matters await my attention. We shall speak later.
As you wish, my lady.
Breach the walls, plough and traitor. Dwarves breach the walls, plough and traitors.
Meave's ears caught the sound of a ruckus coming from the camp.
Thieves! Inglet! A pox upon you all!
It was her quartermaster, hurling oaths at the peasants she had freed from the Nilfgaardian slave convoy. A few had stolen supplies under the cover of darkness and escaped into the woods. Terror and dread gripped the other freed prisoners. Meave mulled over what to do with them, and Reynard, as always, offered some advice.
'Tis high time they went off on their own, your grace. They are too great a hindrance. They slow our march, divert our soldiers from more important tasks. And now this.
Gascon was listening to their conversation. Meave shot him a questioning look.
I opposed taking them in. So, for consistency, I now oppose forcing them to leave. We made their miserable lives our responsibility, did we not? Well then, that is a burden we cannot simply shrug off.
Let us not mince words. We cast off these peasants now, they shall die.
Meave said in the end.
Let them stay. But I want them watched. They cause any more trouble, military justice they shall face. Understood?
The freed prisoners sighed with relief. The infantrymen assigned to watch over them, however, grumbled their disapproval of the Queen's decision.
"'Tis an army, not a shelter,"
they said. Meave's ears surely caught the complaint. But the Queen had never let the opinions of others guide her in such matters, trusting only her own judgment.
Not liking the looks of this.
Gascon said, furrowing his brow. Meave followed his gaze. Before them, beside the road, stood a hut with a scorched thatch roof.
Why?
Huts abandoned, yet dried fruit and mushrooms hang from the eaves. Famine raging all around and no one's been tempted. I'd send a scout if I were you.
The Queen did as Gascon suggested, and sent 3 infantrymen to reconnoitre. They entered the hut and found only silence, that was soon broken by a blood-curdling growl. The soldiers ran out at full speed, tripping over their own legs. Meave drew her sword, convinced a horde of neckers or ghouls would soon attack. But her fears proved unfounded. Instead of monsters, out of the hut came a shaggy dog, a torn scrap of fabric clutched in its teeth.
"Milady!"
One of the soldiers began, his face red with embarrassment and his hands covering a hole in his breeches.
"Was dark as a well inside, and that hound, it jumped out at us all of a sudden, biting it and snapping."
Bad boy,
Gascon said with a smile, then pulled a hunk of dried sausage from his bag. Bought by this generous offering, the dog calmed down at once. Further examination showed the dog was the hut's only resident. Like many others in Aedirn, its owners had disappeared without a trace. Their loyal mutt still guarded the premises, waiting for his master's return.
let's take him with us.
Gascon said.
Otherwise, he'll die here, of his own hunger or someone else's.
A watchful sentry like this could prove useful in our camp.
Said the Queen.
Fine, he can join. But he shall need a name.
How about Reynard?
Proposed Gascon. A cheeky grin smeared across his face.
That way, he'll come when you call, sit on command, and always be a heel. Always heel, that is.
Watch your words,
said Reynard, hand tightly gripping the hilt of his sword.
or you'll learn I'm not at all as tame as you believe.
Enough, both of you. That's an order. As for you,
The Queen took a good look at the dog, who still had a scrap of fabric in his teeth.
since it seems you've a taste for the cloth of the nether regions, I dub you... Knickers. Will that do?
The dog wagged its tail vigorously, as if thoroughly pleased with its new name. Meave's company marched off, a furry new recruit richer.
Watch your heads!
It's gonna be a right good levy, big and beautiful.
That bit the white of an eye from half a league away.
Life had me ploughed, now here I'm marching proud.
Niamh and her companions neared the Moulderwood, a dense, ancient forest of trees whose tangled branches had witnessed the conjunction of the spheres. It was not until King Vidamont's day that a road was finally carved through the primeval thicket, significantly shortening the journey from Rossburg to Aldersburg.
Even when peace reigns, danger rules this road.
Rayla said.
Now no one dares travel it.
At the edge of the wood by the road stood an enormous willow. Its branches swept down to cover its trunk, looking for all the world like long tresses shrouding a woman's face. Niamh had an ill premonition. She did not like the sickly sweet aroma wafting from this tree, nor the metallic buzzing of insect wings. She sent a scout to investigate. He drew aside the drooping branches and stumbled back. There were men bound to the tree, covered in sap oozing from gashes in its trunk. Its heavy scent had attracted swarms of insects, flies, wasps, bees and beetles. They seethed over the bound men, crawling in and out of their ears and nostrils.
Eldain welcomes us to his wood,
Rayla whispered. Niamh stepped towards the tree and saw the men stuck to it were all still alive. Those the elves had caught recently writhed and howled for rescue. Those hanging longer merely followed the Queen with half-crazed, bloodshot eyes.
Well, are you to stand there all day?
Niamh screamed to her dumbstruck Lyrians.
Free them, at once!
Her soldiers needed no more prompting and set about sawing at the ropes with their blades. As soon as they had freed the first captive, before even a word of thanks could be uttered, a flaming streak soared through the air and stuck in the tree. The oozing resin burst into flames, engulfing the prisoners as well as the soldiers who had come to their aid. Elder speech battle cries rang out from the woods as elven warriors launched their attack.
Nilcancia! It's a trap!
Cried Reynard.
Defend the Queen!
Keep your heads in the fight! They'll seek to blind us with shock and awe!
Watch your heads!
My spirit's willing and how, but these damn boots are killing me.
Anyone! Kill them! Kill them all!
No time for that.
None shall tread on us!
Yeah.
Now we will see who is weak!
Bigger they are, easier they are to target.
Dance of death! Ha! Ha!
Death to Old One!
Yeah.
Have strength, my love.
Discipline shall bring us victory!
The storm is coming. Let's enjoy the weather while we still can.
The chase is on!
Don't let them regroup! Finish off the wounded!
The battle done, Meve surveyed the carnage, her breath still ragged. The thick stench of blood, sap, and ash she sucked in made her stomach churn and head swoon.
The Scoia'tael. I'd heard of their cruelty, but...
The Queen said, sheathing her sword.
But never have I countenanced a thing like this.
Black Rayla, who had just extracted her blade from between an elven gorilla's ribs, smiled darkly.
Worst is yet to come, my lady.
The Queen regrouped her forces and marched into the Moulderwood. The Lyrians sang none of their usual marching songs. Instead, they walked in silence, eyes darting constantly to their flanks.
Hear that? Nightingales. Unmindful of war, they sing on.
Those are no birds, my lady. Just Scoia'tael scouts use animal cries to communicate. Tell the... Us or them, no other way!
Nay, Dwan ve camest.
Nothing personal, I assure you.
I smell a leak.
Slaughter them to a man!
I was hoping you'd say that.
We got a job to do. Now we will see who is weak.
Have it the white of an eye from half a league away.
I shall not fail!
Fine! If my coin's rank to ye, go kiss a dog neath its tail.
The chase is on!
Dance of death! Ha! Ha!
Dwarf!
On the edge of the Moulderwood there stood a small village, Crumhorn. The hamlet was surrounded by a high palisade, while the villagers carried makeshift weapons, flails, axes, and nail-studded planks. Life as the Scoia'tael's neighbors was clearly not easy. While her men rested, Meave approached two of the villagers. They lowered their heads in respect and fidgeted nervously with their shirt hems.
My lady, reckon you ought to know. Elves meeting traders in the woods at night. Buy swords, herbs.
Rayla, who had overheard the conversation, twisted her mouth in a hateful scowl.
Hawkers stink worse than vermin. Willing to help murderers for coin. Please, milady, we must find them and punish them. You, talk. Where do these meetings take place?
The peasants looked at each other. One scratched his head, the other toed the sand. Finally, one of them blurted out,
"Could tell you, milady, yes, but only for gold."
I see I'm dealing with shrewd men of trade. Fine. Your fee.
Meave took a few coins from her pouch and tossed them on the ground. The peasants dropped on all fours and started snatching the coins from the grass, ignoring the contemptuous gaze of the Queen's soldiers.
Them hawkers wheeled them goods to the old fishing hut north of here. Scoia'tael come a-crawling from the woods, the first crow of the cockerel.
The Queen told her men to prepare to fight the Scoia'tael and their abettors. Black Rayla sat on a fallen trunk and sharpened her sword. The grinding of stone on blade sounded a grim promise.
Two dogs fight. Third sure to get the bone.
We got the gold. Them elves will get a beating. Now that's what I call good custom.
Meave arrived at the hut the villagers claimed to be the meeting point for the Scoia'tael and the hawkers. Torchlight flickered amidst the trees, and she heard the sound of hushed voices.
Your Grace,
whispered Rayla.
They're in our grasp. We must act quickly before the elves retreat into the woods.
Quite a lot of them.
The Queen said, her brow furrowed.
We'd best fall back. Reynard, retreat.
Your Grace, we can't simply...
We can.
Meave said, cutting Rayla off.
My aim is not to pacify elven rebels, but to cross these woods and reach Aldersburg. We must match our actions to our intentions.
Rayla said nothing. She didn't have to. Her face was an open tome, writ